This is approval of agenda. The first item. We have the agenda here.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Second.
There's Sean here. Third. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. That's this. So we adjourn the open session and go into closed session, right? At 4. Everything is on?
Yeah.
We go to open session at 5:04. Item A, chief of staff report. Item A, no action, information only. Item B, quality review. Item 1 and 2, both quality of peer review credentials and quality report. Motion to approve. Made a motion for them.
On a motion approved.
Second. And is that as to both reports?
Both reports.
Motion approved.
All in
Both
favor?
reports.
Aye.
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 Which one are we doing
Both item B, 1 and 2 together.
together?
Quality review.
Yeah. A motion to approve.
I'll abstain.
Aye.
I don't know whether I was here for fully for their presentation or was only part of presentation. Had already gone.
No, you were here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. Move on to item C, which is the information only, and the rest of D, E, F, and G will be done later, next session. We'll go into public comments. Here, any public?
I have one introduction before Dr. Zacharias. I'd like to introduce Dr. Andrew Mondela. He's an interventional cardiologist that completed his training in Florida. He's also board trained in nuclear cardiology, also in cardiovascular computed tomography, and also completed his national boards in echocardiography. So please give us Dr. Andrew Mondela.
I just started, I think I got a temper to do this last week, so I started working. I think permanent in this in background. So I do interventional as well. I do structural heart disease too. I train in structural heart disease, so I can do replacements, repairs, and ASCD for closure. And also do right side permanent involvement. Thank you.
Welcome and thank you. Any public comments, written or anything in person? Mr. Eko?
Thank you. If I'd like to do an ER appraisal, I sort of did a impromptu examination a couple of weeks ago over there. Well, thank you. Anyway. Okay, I went on Thursday, September 9th, spent 5 or 6 hours back up to the ER, down all the way there. Had X-ray, blood work, EKG. One ER doctor did a good job. And they told me it looked like I had an injury situation and called on the eminent Dr. Ray there to make an appointment for the next morning. So he showed up and said, yeah, if you hadn't come in here, you might not have come in here. So thank you. Anyway, despite the fact after the post, somebody found some food for me. And I wound up staying overnight in ER on a gurney because there was no room available anymore, I guess. Had procedure Friday around 8 or 9 o'clock. And again, after they got out, they found something for me to eat. So I'm quite appreciative of that. And spent the day in recovery. I had a nice meal that evening. Had a grilled salmon with Mongo salsa. And I thought that was pretty good. I thought I might come back fainted today. Anyway, Dan Lather stopped by to say hi and make sure that I was getting the proper care and all. And my physician, Mary, showed up once or twice, and then Dr. Reddy popped in and threw me out. That I've been there long enough. So, and I want to thank everybody for everything they did there. For the most part, a very positive stay. The nurses, techs, and everyone, all pleasant, very friendly, considerate, do their jobs, did them quickly and smoothly. Responded quickly to everything and explained everything and answered any questions I had. So it was very good. Couple negative items. There's only one ER doctor there that I could tell, and I give to understand that all there is. I don't know. That seems a little odd, but I don't know. I'm not in that part. I did wind up spending 30 hours on the gurney. Until I got on the gurney was to get on the table for the procedure. I was never able to get a bed or a room or anything. I spent the whole night there. And there was no call button down there in that yard where I was in. So when I had to get hold of somebody, I had to disconnect myself and walk over to the door and stick my head out and yell for someone to come in. So I don't know what the problem was there. But in general, yeah, I was very pleased with everything that went on. It's done well. Everybody handled it quite well. Sort of as an aside, my dealings with the hospital have always been very pleasant and very good. I've been in before some years ago. So facilities are clean and within bounds of what you do in a hospital, comfortable. And information requests have always been very quickly responded to. Your front desk people are very friendly and helpful. AR, financial assistance people are right there to help you if you have problems. So all in all, yeah, I guess I would say that I would recommend your use to family. So again, thank you, Dr. Reddy, and Don and the whole crew. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for those comments, Richard. Thank you. And we apologize for you being on a gurney for 30 hours. That was the situation, and I decided to send him home same evening because he's going to be happier at home than on the gurney overnight again. So,
Yeah, you're going for a break.
and by the way, staffing issue, not because we didn't have beds, we did not have enough staff. Thank you again. Any other comments? We'll move on to consent agenda. I need a motion to approve that. Unless somebody has any questions, sir.
Motion approved consent agenda is presented.
Any second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. So go on to item number 8, approval of minutes from August 23, the regular board meeting. You had a chance to review it? I have done. Any motion for that? So second. I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Item number 9, CEO report, done.
Yes, I have a couple items I want to update the board and the community on. So for this month, in the news, our volunteer league awarded actually these individuals with scholarships over $1,700 each of these recipients. And it was awarded during their league meeting just last week. And so we wanted to honor them. Also, we just completed our annual competency, quite timely given that the Joint Commission's here, but we typically do our competencies in September. This is quite an all-week push with our education department, and this is well coordinated. So we had a significant attendance on this on the competency this year. Right now we're in an engagement survey process. So this is a survey that we do every couple of years. We use McLean & Company. And so we have until the end of this week, well, actually tomorrow is the deadline to complete this poll survey. And this will give us feedback from our employees of how are things going. There's several questions. The only difference that we'll have from this survey than from prior surveys is the ability to benchmark because the questions changed a little bit. So there will be not that comparison like we've had in the past. Flu vaccines are now available. We did push our date back a little bit this year comparative to prior years. Our employee health is actually started this week to administer all the flu vaccines. So very busy time until October 31st. And then we actually launched our first health insights. Thank you to Kim in the marketing division. We do have a hard copy on the table back here behind you. We'd like for you to take. So it's a beautiful addition for the fall. So this will be something that'll be coming out periodically to provide to our community and give them updates on what we're doing here at Sierra View. And then the visitation, as you know, COVID, there's always constantly changes. So the latest change that happened last week is the ability to not request from our visitors their vaccination card. So we were able to modify that. It will help with the backlog that we're seeing up in the front. Been very concerned about the number of people that are waiting to try to check in just because of the process that we had. So that actually changed based on CDPH's guidelines. So a little bit of relief there. Service line highlights, we had a number of departments, our clinical documentation, our surgical tech week. Also, we're for this month, for department service line highlights for us. And then hospital events. Bring to your attention this Saturday at the Ramirez's home will be the dueling pianos. And so are there tickets available still? There are some tickets available, and it starts at 5:30. It starts at 5:30. First ever that I've ever seen this kind of event come to our community. So they'll be playing for, I understand, for about 3 to 4 hours.
Pianos will go from 7 to 10, and then cocktails start at 5:30 with appetizers, and then dinner at 6:30.
Yeah,
There's a silent option as well.
so donations are being raised for our WOWs, which is our computers on wheels. So we want to definitely raise some significant money there. And then our CTC fundraiser that we do every quarter for Denim Day was on September 15th. And then employee recognition. I wanted to take a minute and recognize Dr. Hudson, who actually was inducted into the Nursing Hall of Fame in Fresno last week for his accomplishments as being the Nursing Leadership Coalition in the San Joaquin Valley. So I think this is the first time ever somebody from Sierra View has ever been inducted into the Hall of Fame. So great job. And then also want to welcome our new director of DPSNF. We call her Jean, but Jaylyn is her name, and she's been with us since the beginning of September, actually August now, I think it has been. So she's leading that our DPSNF. As you can see, she has lots of experience and comes to us with lots of experience in California as well around long-term care. And then we actually have now hired Shay Moore as our director of cardiac cath. As many of you know, we lost Tori, and she is now our manager of our director of cardiac cath and IR position. And then last but not least, we have 3 individuals that have Christian, who is a new recent hire. And he actually completed his certification in Med-Surg. We had Dr. Elizabeth Trenigan that finished her certification in inpatient obstetric nursing. And then Jessica, an RN, who actually received her bachelor's degree. She works at our wound care center. And then last but not least, our recruitment efforts. As you know, staffing is still the highest important initiative for us. And we have raised our sign-on bonuses and referral bonuses. But again, many initiatives around trying to recruit enough staff daily to this organization to be able to provide the care. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, Jeff. Very good.
Thank you.
No problem. Let's go into business items now. August financials. Doug, take it away.
All right. Looking August overall was from a revenue side, volume better than July. 2 days off by a couple percent. Average length of stay below budget. Outpatient visits were above budget. Year to date, our days are still 6% off from budget. Length of stay is lower, which is good. And outpatient visits lagging. And compared to a year ago, we're way off on day. But it's a different time. Revenues for the month, inpatient off slightly, so outpatient was up 18%. Total patient revenue was up 4.6 million from budget. Again, most of it being in the outpatient. Slightly better on supplementals. We had net patient revenue that was about 90,000 greater than budgeted. Other operating revenue was below by 73. So we came in on our operating revenue right around budget. Stories on the expense side, salaries, wages, and benefits were up about 94,000. Pro fees were up 78,000. Purchase services up over 100. Supplies were up about $250,000. A lot of that was surgical supplies, implants, and lab supplies. Other expenses were over slightly. So our operating expenses about $14.25 million. That's the issue. So we got a operating loss of $1,667,000, 52% greater than budget. Non-operating items. Total non-operating revenue was 100,000 better than budgeted. So we had a decrease in our net position of $1,374,000 before taking in the fair value of investments, which was $1,173,000 decrease. So we had an overall decrease in our net position of $2,548,000. Year-to-date revenues, just slightly better than budget. Net patient revenues up about $1.5 million. Other operating revenues down to 10, so we're 1.7 below budget on operating revenue. And overall expenses were up $358,000. So we have a loss right now from operations for $1,227,000. Non-operating items year to date, $664,000. We're almost $300,000 greater than budgeted. And then we have our decrease in fair value of $890,000. So we have a decrease in net position of $1,452,000. And compared to a year ago, just looking through the operations, last year we had a slight gain from operations at this time. Investments doing better now than where we were a year ago. Interest rates changing. We'll go back and forth though with the lowering of the fair value, but we will, as we pick up new investments, get better returns. Staffing costs right now, $16,150,000, so $269,000 greater than budget. Again, considering it as a percentage of op revenue, though, we're $721,000 greater, and compared to a year ago, $3,275,000 the impact. Provider productivity slightly below budget, and just a little bit above last year. And then our key ratios, days cash on hand at 377. I think that's the first time we've been below 400 in quite some time. And you can see the operating and EBITDA margins are very low. Debt to capitalization fund, and right now, just annualizing it out, our debt service coverage ratio is a negative 2.37. Some reporting dates coming up. Single audit, which we'll hear about in a little bit, is due this Friday. Provider Relief Fund third period reporting for the 6 months ended June 30th, 21 is also due this Friday. And then we had earlier this week, actually, we sent it in last week, a completion certificate for the 2019 series bond. So the completion certificate, within 3 years of taking out the bonds, the expectation is you're going to spend most of the money. COVID happened, inflation happened. Gary, do you recall the increase in our estimated cost of construction for the?
I don't remember off the top of my head, it was significant, the increase.
8 to 12 million at last count. And so the inflation on it has just kind of stopped that project. So we've got to kind of gather here and figure out where do we go. But as part of what we sent in that report is, you know, at the time, our intention was obviously to spend that money, but things happen that are out of our control. And so, as I just said, a revised plan will be forthcoming. Any question?
On the contract staff, how come we are higher than last year? This 1.5 million.
So last year we started off the year really low on contracted staff. It was as we moved in, I think September, October, we started bringing in some of the people from the state, and fortunately got a lot of that subsidized, but it just picked up after that because we were also losing some of our own staff. So we started off in pretty good shape the first couple of months of last year, and then it kind of unraveled.
The problem continues now, right?
Yeah, it's a little less than it was. Pro fees being over this month were more, well, some of it was contracted staffing and imaging, and some of it was what are called legal costs for our overage. But we had budgeted a pretty sizable amount for them.
The travelers coming to that, right? The travelers coming to contracted staff?
Yes.
Yeah. So how are we doing on the travelers now? Are we on the trend?
We are lower than where we were. One of the things where you see where salary, wages, and benefits are up is we're moving people into what we're calling seasonal per diems. So they're really more our staff, but they're at a little higher rate, still less than the contracted staff. And then there's also the overtime and premium pay of our staff.
What are the areas in those expenses that we have control on that we can start working on trying to?
On the contracts, I mean, the first thing is can you negotiate lower rates? The other one is what can we do differently in our internal operations to say, can we do with 5 fewer or something like that to reduce some of those positions?
Are we working on these efficiencies we talked about in every department, everywhere, wherever you see efficiencies, redundancies, people out there that are probably not necessary? As I said, surgical precision rather than across the board cutting.
Right.
Are you looking at it constantly or not?
We're
I'm
still looking at everywhere. We're trying to pick and
exactly.
But one of our problems too is as we start looking at certain areas, either have more people leave, which puts us in a bind, or we have leaves of absence, which I think we were talking about. At any given day, we could have 40 plus open positions, 40 plus people on leaves.
Well, that's specific to RNs.
Huh?
That's specific to RNs.
RNs is probably the biggest area of our.
Yeah, for example, there's staffing in the operating room. There may be 14, there are only 2 rooms running, things like that.
Correct.
So when you have inefficiencies and structural, and we don't like to see anybody sitting around doing nothing in this environment when we have this kind of cost overruns.
Correct.
So that's tightening the belts.
So yeah,
continue this path, we had to across the board cuts, which is not good.
Right. No, but you're right. So that's one of those things trying to run. Can we run only say 3 rooms instead of the 4 or whatever?
Yeah. That's just an example, but I'm sure there are every area you can look at it across the organization somewhere. Whether there's inefficiency, it needs to be eliminated as soon as possible.
Correct.
Because it's an urgency, month after month, we can't be doing this.
No.
Because the August was better than July, still you ended up with the loss. When July was worse, but August improved the revenues, but still your operating expenses were the problem. Because revenues is the budget, but operating expenses over the budget. So that's cannot continue anymore.
And the other one, on the cash side too. Last year at this time, we'd received, I think, 5.5 or so million of supplemental payments. This year we've received none.
We have none. So that's why it's time to get on diet.
Yes. My question. So how about COVID leaves? Is that going to impact now? Because I think it could be ending or maybe extended, but I don't think it's going to be added. Does that hurt us all financially because we have to bring people in for overtime, right? But people are out for extended period, like 10 days at a time.
That's part of the leave. So we're in a given day, we have 80 nurses out vacant, whether it's a unfilled position or a nurse on leave for any type of reason.
But that also affects the bottom line as well. We got to bring people in for overtime as well. And that stops at the end of this month possibly, and maybe it's going to probably be extended.
It's going to extend till December.
Yay. So.
And that's unfunded mandate, right? Of additional pay.
80 additional hours per employee.
Will it only be unused time, or they'll actually get restarted again within the 80 hours again? The 40 hours.
80 hours until the end of December, and then I'm not sure if it's going to get extended into the year or not.
Last time they reset it, right?
Yes, but it's 80 from the last
one
period.
So anyone that had already used it, that's already used it. Right. Okay, because I know that's affecting it as well, right?
Yes.
So the staff are using it.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh yeah. I know.
I think it comes to the same thing, efficiency, eliminating middle managers who probably not necessary in some places. Those are areas to look initially. Otherwise, I think this is a problem. We just,
Have you guys asked the department heads to look at areas of the places where they can do some cuts and stuff for more efficiency?
So we've set up teams that are working on purchase services and contracts. So, and then staffing. Those are our 3 areas that we're working on.
Thank you, Doug. Next report. We have going single audit.
You want to approve?
Are we going to do that?
Approve that.
Oh yeah. Can we have a motion to approve the financials? I need a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve them.
Second? I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So can we go to B now, or do we need to get him online?
We're gonna put them on Zoom.
Yeah. So next item is single audit.
Brian or John, can you hear us?
Yes, good evening. I can. I see John on the line.
I
here.
just unmuted as well. Thank you.
There we
Brian.
go.
All right. I believe we're here to talk about the 21 single audit. Is that correct, Doug?
Correct.
Okay. As you know, Brian and I have been part of the Sierra View financial statement audits for several years now. Brian is here to provide some support and planned comments. We do not have a planned presentation. However, I do have the report that we're prepared to issue. We have completed the fiscal year end 2021 single audit for Sierra View Local Healthcare District. We are excited to be able to complete that. It was no small task. Doug and his team with Murley provided as much support as they could in a timely manner, and with their assistance, we completed our audit procedures. We are prepared to issue an unmodified opinion on the major program that was subjected to audit. As you can imagine, that major program was the program that is commonly referred to as the Provider Relief Fund. It has a much longer name now, thanks to the good folks in HHS. They've added on the Rural Act plan as well. So what I thought I would do is just bring the report on screen for you. And so if you could provide me the ability to do that, that would be great. If I've got it, perfect. And I'll kind of walk through the components of what it looks like and why things are there, where they're there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, John, are you able to share your screen with us?
I am. I would be happy to. View options. Share screen. It says I cannot share screen while the presentation that's currently on screen is being shared.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, can you share now?
Same situation. Oh, there we go. Can you see my screen? There's a
Yes.
PDF report that I'm wiggling around.
Yes.
All right. I thought I would highlight this table of contents as to what's really changing. So I've drawn a box around all of the new content. So you're used to seeing this top section, management's discussion and analysis, our report, the consolidated financial statements and the related footnotes to those statements, as well as supplementary information, the consolidating statements of net position and statements of revenues and expenses and changes in net position. So what's new is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. That's where you're reporting to the federal government what you spent within this reporting period. The common perception is you spend along the same premise as your fiscal year end. Provider Relief changed that, as Doug and team are intimately aware. The funds that were received in the first semi-annual period of the pandemic, and so I want you to think back to the period of April through June of 2020. Those funds received in that period have a period of availability through June 30 of 21. That's the period that's been reported on. That's the only period that's being reported on in this single audit. So think about those receipts that have happened in period 2. That's the 6 months between July and December of 20, and the 6 months between January and June of 21. Those receipts will get reported in your single audit for 2022. So there's a large disconnect between when you receive the funds, when you recognize the funds in revenue, and now this third component, when they're being reported on as part of the single audit. Any questions about those different periods that I mentioned? Doug has probably shared this intimately with you over the course of several board meetings, I presume. Okay, so the schedule of federal awards, there's the notes to the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and then there's the two reports and the schedule of findings and questions costs. So these are all the required components of the single audit report that we're gonna quickly go through. So this first report is just a recap of the financial statement audit. The only addition here, so this is that report right here, is we issued this, but there was no reason to release it because it just has this reference to the government auditing standards that we performed in addition to the normal AICPA auditing standards to be compliant with the single audit requirements. So we did that last year. This is just placeholders for all the information. And so what I have on screen, I'm going to zoom it in for you. This is that schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And right here on the first row is the provider relief fund. And so in the period, that reporting period 1, which has an availability to spend period of 18 months, you received and expended $3,085,000. In addition, you also received some pass-through funds from the California Health Foundation Trust that's tied to the National Bioterrorism Hospital Preparedness Program. These funds have a traditional expenditure. They were expended in the fiscal year 2021. And so that would include the 6 months from July through December of 2020. The next page is the footnotes to the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Most of this is pretty boilerplate. Recognition of what the schedule is, what it's doing, the guidance, the requirements, Title II, U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, etc. This is the paragraph that looks different. So this captures the essence of the reporting period, the dates of receipt, and how they align with when they were recognized in the financial statements of the organization. And so as you can see right here, the $3,085,000 that was received was recognized in the year ended June 30, 2020, and by default is sitting in the beginning net assets of 21. These are pretty standard accounting policies, accrual basis accounting. You are accrual basis reporters. You did not elect to use the 10% de minimis indirect cost rate, given that the federal government gave you this money and really didn't have you focus on the ability to apply for a contract. There was no opportunity to negotiate some sort of indirect cost rate participation. And there's no subrecipients of these funds. The next 2 pages are the report that we're issuing on internal control or final financial reporting based on our audit performed with government auditing standards. So I mentioned earlier that we had a reference to this report. We performed these procedures. We performed this audit, the financial statement audit, in accordance with both AICPA and government auditing standards. And this report is dated just like your original financial statement audit. The second report is the new report, essentially. This is the report on compliance for the major federal program that was audited, which was the Provider Relief Fund, the report on internal control over compliance, and the report on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards that we just walked through. Essentially, what this report says is that we did not identify any findings to report. And then we duplicate that in a pictorial format right here on the schedule of findings and questions costs, where you can see in this first section, financial statements, unmodified opinion, no material weaknesses identified in the 2021 financial statements, no significant deficiencies identified, no material non-compliance. For the federal awards, same thing, material weaknesses none, significant deficiencies none reported, no audit findings on compliance, a recap of the program that was determined to be the major program. It's important for you to understand that the selection of the major programs is focused on a threshold, and that threshold this year was identified as $750,000. This last bullet right here, qualified as a low risk auditee. That's basically a scope threshold that we're required to use as auditors. You have to have 2 years of essentially a good audit report, no material weaknesses, no material compliance findings. At that point, you would then move into a low risk auditee status, which basically gives you lower coverage thresholds. But that's like the step 3 in our testing for determining major programs. The last pages are any financial statement findings, any award findings. We had none to report. If we had some to report, they would be reported here on these pages. Are there any questions? Happy to entertain them.
No questions.
Okay. I will let you take it back over.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate your work on this, and thanks to Doug and Marley and the team for getting this done and sent in on time.
Thank you, John, for being thorough.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And thank you, Doug, for all the work behind the scenes.
Marley and the accounting staff.
This is the information only item, so we can move on to the next item.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Take care.
Bye, John.
So item C, so that has information only, no action on that.
We'll actually need approval. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's the one we had. Yeah, but we do need a motion to approve the single audit.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Let's go into C, Tree of Angels request for donations.
Yes. So Tree of Angels has become a staple here at the hospital. We've had many great partnerships over the years to include some of our community, the Family Crisis Center, many of the schools to help the families in need. We know the financial situation is hard right now. So we would appreciate any donation amount that you see fit. Also, the community is, with the time of year is also in more need than ever as well. So it's a balance of trying to be good stewards of our resources, but also being that partner to the community who also has a great need at this time. Our employees do a great job in helping to adopt the families. We typically commit to about 75 families. We've reduced it the previous years because, again, of the pandemic and just the financial constraints of not only our employees to give and adopt the families, but also the resources here at the hospital. So once again, we would just ask that you would consider any amount that you see fit to help with this cause that does go to support the local families. And they are vetted out through the social workers at each school in the area. And then they're vetted through the Family Crisis Center.
So I kind of forgot. So we did that every year.
Yes, we've been doing it for
These are for the kids.
Family.
Kids, yeah. Yes.
How much did we donate? How much did we donate last?
10,000. Previous years it had been 20,000. We have reduced the amount of families that we commit to adopt to just be more reasonable within what we can manage for our resources, as well as physical resources, as well as financial resources that we seem to be able to manage with the 10,000.
Probably go with the last year's until things improve, then we'll probably go higher. Yeah. So other people donate for this, or just is our project?
Yes. So many of the employees, sometimes they do it individually, and sometimes they get together as a department and they adopt 1 to 3 families. And then also the families that don't get adopted, as well as some other necessities that are needed is what the donations are covered by the board. So for instance, we partner with Town and Country and we give them each a grocery voucher so that they can buy some necessities that they need. In addition to trying to give gifts, we also try to make sure that we are giving them some necessities that they need during the holiday season.
Thank you. So the motion to approve the amount and I'll say I make a motion that we give same as last year.
I'll second that.
$10,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Thank you for that. And we'll go on to number B. 927 responsibility delegate charter retirement plan administration committee.
Yes, so in your packet is the actual charter. And the next agenda item to follow is the resolution. So the board's responsibility is the oversight of the retirement plans, and they delegate this to a committee which is made up of the CFO, the CEO, and the VP of HR. This hasn't been brought back to you. It was on our task list to look at. And so it's on actually to follow the Tree of Angel.
Right after, right?
Yes, the next one. So what we did need to update, provide a marked up copy in your packet on page 2. We had to change the title to the VP of Human Resources, and that's a consistent change throughout the document. So therefore it needs to be brought back for the board's approval. The purpose and the objectives are still the plans, the 3 plans which we oversee as a committee. The committee meets quarterly. We have a third-party consultant that we've used for years, MoMA Group. His name is Brian Montanez. We keep minutes. We get fiduciary education every quarter. We look at the investments. We will retire investments based on their performance, based on the recommendations, and we actually renegotiate the expense for our employees to reduce the basis point expense. We got a planned expense that's very low comparative to in the industry. So those are the types of activities that we do to ensure that our employees have a fair and equitable retirement plan and investments are maintained. Touch on a few things. We bring back an annual report to you every December regarding the activities that we have done throughout the year. We've provided that every year for the last 3 years now. So just our accountability to the board on that activity. And then, so we ask for your approval of that. And then to follow is the resolution that memorializes this change in the charter.
How are we performing well, the funds?
Yes, yeah, they're doing well. We've only had to retire. We don't retire often because we have a very small menu of options, but we are diversified in that option, and there's many options for the employees.
I mean, like you're performing with the market, so it's there.
Yeah.
And the market's not doing so good.
Yeah, the market's not so good.
So, yeah. Okay, so this one, each one separately approved. I mean, yeah.
Yes.
So any questions on this item?
No.
We need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the retirement plan administration committee one.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So item E on the same line.
I make a motion to approve the amending compositions of the authority of the administrative.
I second. All in favor? Aye. The capital item F, capital budget, Q3 and Q4. That's the next one. That's the next one.
Today I'll be presenting the Q4 report for fiscal year 2022. And to start off, I want to go over the budget breakdown. So each quarter is allocated with a certain amount of projects that makes up that amount in each quarter. So in the first quarter, we have 1.8 million. In the second quarter, 783,064. Third quarter with 635,921. And fourth quarter with 52,036. summing to 3.3 million for our capital budget. Financing on capital projects. In the fourth quarter, it is displayed with an original budget of 52,037. 53,537 of that was approved, and $0 has been dispersed out of the 52,037 original budget we started off. Disbursements by quarter. In the first quarter, 13,443, 472,856 in the second quarter, 257,358 in the third quarter, and 425,721 in the fourth. Summing first, second, third, and fourth with a total of 1.1 million dispersed out of our 3.3 million capital budget. And this includes all of our capital projects together. Finances on contingency projects. Approved budget for fiscal year 2022, a 400,000 budget. First quarter, 222,760 was approved. 113,642 in the second quarter. 365,910 in the third quarter. 36,855 in the fourth quarter. Summing to 739,168 out of our 400,000 contingency. So as you can see here in our third quarter, it was slightly higher than the rest of the quarters, and that is due to some unforeseen items that caused an increase in our cost and projects. Contingency disbursements, the first quarter with 41,526. Second quarter with 221,888, 88,754 in the third quarter, 127,681 in the fourth. Summing first, second, third, and fourth with 479,851 out of the 400,000 budget in contingency. Usually with these type of projects, some of them may take longer to complete, and that's why we don't see all the payments go through in the fourth quarter. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And this one is a fiscal year 2022 project summary. So capital budget for fiscal year 22 with a 3.3 million. Our contingency budget was 400,000. Total capital with contingency budget with a total of 3.7 million. Contingency projects 739,168. The total cost of all projects, this includes capital and contingency together, summing to 4.1 million. Based on the total capital with contingency budget and the overall cost of all projects, fiscal year 22 went over budget by 339,168. We did have cost savings in projects with 768,797, which we had a remaining contingency balance of 429,629. And the cost savings in some of these, the savings you see here with the 768,000, that just varies. It could be we were able to negotiate better deals with vendors and promotions discounts that made the project be on the positive side, as well as we had placed a few projects on hold that increased that cost savings in that in the yellow line. And do you guys have any questions?
It's interesting. So were the canceled projects or mostly savings? There were like the amount, there was some project that didn't happen either way, or is it all savings, the 700,000?
Some of them, some of our projects were placed on hold.
Hold in first quarter.
Yes. Other projects, like I mentioned earlier, we had negotiations with vendors and discounts that we did not foresee. There were not in place at the time we had approved certain projects, so that it kind of each project either increases, decreases. So it just kind of varies our numbers.
So some of those include some of those scanners and all that we did, right?
Correct. Yes.
Good job, huh? Save it. Yeah. So whatever left over, it goes to next year, or it just goes back?
No.
Savings.
Yeah.
Dr. Mariano, so for the contingency, we had a couple of major failures that we didn't anticipate. One was the elevator and one was the door to the linear accelerator vault. So that's what raised our contingency in that third quarter. And then we looked at the fourth quarter to see how we could try to offset some of that. And there were a couple things. We had one project that was a Kaiser Oshkosh project that was still in that approval stage. So we realized that we wouldn't be spending the funds until this fiscal year. So that's how we juggle things around to make that happen.
Thanks for explaining. Good. Get a motion to approve the capital. No questions? Yeah, motion to approve it. The second, all in favor? Aye. All right, let's go to the next topic, which will be conflict of interest code review. To adopt the conflict of interest code, which is, I think we got an email, I believe I saw that one on that one.
Yeah, the conflict.
And Alex can enlighten us a little bit on that.
Yeah, so most of you are familiar with the Political Reform Act and the different conflicts of interest so elected officials have to promise not to have. Our conflict of interest code is a code that's in place just to make sure everyone's aware of that. The 2 years ago and then 4 years ago, there were some overhauls and we redid the code. One of the problems is that they're always tinkering with the resolutions. And so every year or so, there'll be small updates. And to alleviate this, our code says we promise to stay up to date and have a policy that will keep up with the law's changes. And so as far as this code is concerned, all it's doing is saying our code is to promise to have a policy in place that's up to date. And so it's exactly the same as what it was 2 years ago for that reason. And we just need to get it reapproved and send it to the Board of Supervisors, County Board of Supervisors, to show that we're in compliance with the law.
So basically our code is that we have a code.
Yes.
You're motion for approval for that?
I have a question. There it says something about some of the positions have excluding interest in real property. And some of the vice presidents, they don't have that. Is there a reason for that? I'm looking at this piece of paper.
Yeah, it has to do typically with the level of control that individual might have over contracting. And so you'll notice it's the vice presidents that don't have to do the full disclosure because anything they do ostensibly is going through their superiors.
And all real property has to be approved by the board. There's nobody in the senior level that can make that approval of property without board action.
So if they don't have authority to enter into that conflict in the first place, then they don't have disclosure.
Okay.
And then also on Appendix A, we did add Melissa's position of VP of Quality and Regulatory Affairs on our Appendix A.
Appendix, Consider the decision makers. Basically applies to all the decision making people who are making decisions. Makes sense.
But currently all of our contracts are either signed by Doug or myself. That enters the district in.
Yeah.
Official.
And board members will do the Form 700 and all those things anyway. Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, the motion? Make a motion to approve it. Second? I second it. All in favor? Aye. The next one, let's see. Make it here. No. We're done with those, right? We're done with all those items on that. Business items. Announcement, regular board meeting is next meeting, October 25, 2020 at 4:30 p.m. And the next two items are ethics training and anti-harassment training. I believe this is for the board, right? That we
Yeah,
will
their
do it.
annual requirements. Mhm.
I think I've done some of those that. Yeah, so we need to be doing those, right?
And
So with that, the open session is closed at 5:59. And then we'll take a 5-minute break and congregate to.
necessary.
So we're back in, can we go in open session yet? We're back in open session, 8:07. This is for the few items that we did earlier. Let's see, we start with item D, which is the compliance matter, which is information only, no action, no vote on that. And the next one is item, let's see, E, which is also information only, no action to be taken. And then you have next one is item F. It is
the action items got withdrawn, and so yeah, I think there's more information that needs to be provided.
Information only to be provided to the board members.
So Ms. Hefner is just having her contract updated to add HIPAA language and basically replace the term.
Yes.
This contract is, yes, just for the board's review, pending the next meeting, and it'll be on the agenda and discussed in open session at the next meeting. Just so it doesn't get construed as a contract renegotiation.
What is this?
It is Ms. Hefner's, your CEO's employment contract. And they're redlined our proposed revisions.
Some changes.
So mainly like the first page, there was a couple of typos.
Plans issues and got some typos.
Updated the base salary to fit what it already is, which is in compliance with the existing contract. And then added in on page, I think, 14, I added just a protected health information clause to fit the federal regulations on protected health information.
Item 13 is added to the HIPAA regulations.
I added it because the contract is being changed, so why not include it? It's not something I feel too concerned about, other than because we have a separate confidentiality and policy in place. So
when does the current contract expire?
In 2 years.
18 months.
Is it 18 months?
18 months. And I think that those are the item G, information only.
The one last thing, I know we're going to get a public a request for production of records from Mr. Eckhoff, a member of the public is here. This is a public record. Does any board member have any objection to me just handing him a copy? I think it'll save Whitney some work tomorrow.
No objection.
Don't want the copy of it.
So
after you read it, you have to be shocked.
Fair enough.
So I have one question because I think in our understanding is that the contracts cannot be. I'm actually quoting Robert. The contract cannot be more than 2 years. And so this contract calls for 4-year extension. And so,
So I didn't redo Robert's research from the last time this went into place, but 2 years ago, it was a 4-year term was the maximum. So
Robert had said that it is only, we are allowed only 2-year contract. I don't care if it is a 10-year contract or not. Basically, it's a matter of sorting out what kind of contracts we are allowed to sign. And like in colleges, professors are tenured, they cannot be fired.
It's 4 years and the severance can't be any more than 18 months.
Correct. But it would be finding the code provision that says 4 years. So because the negotiations would all happen in open next month, thank you for giving me the heads up on that question so that I can bring that answer to you at the next meeting.
Whatever is legal.
Yeah, no, I think it's nice to have the actual law instead of just a statement from an attorney.
Right. Well, I mean,
you get actual research.
Yeah, no, just, and it won't take long to pull the health and safety code and the government code. It'll be fine.
Google search.
Yeah, honestly, that's a good place to start.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I think we covered all items and
item G.
Item G was information, right? Yeah, no action taken. We covered all items. So that concludes the session. We need to have more vote for adjourning the meeting, right? What do you adjourn the meeting?
A motion.
You can second, all in favor? Aye. Better 8:10. Thank you. Thank you for being patient. I think we had a good education session today.
Motion.
It is, I learned a lot from.
I don't.
Eric. I learned a lot from Eric that he's very good. He knows the overview of what's happening. Very educational because. Oh, look at that.
You should do our own. So somebody said.
No, not MS. We don't need MS. We already have. Run it through that if we decide that. I mean, it's a challenging route though. It's a little better, but it's a lot of work. They have recruit people. I mean, you know.
Your bedtime.
I still am not happy. You got something.
No,
Yes, can't do.